Most folks buy a bag of potatoes at the store, set it on the counter or under the sink, and within a few weeks the whole lot has gone soft and wrinkled and sprouted long white shoots and turned green in patches, and into the bin it goes. And they figure that's just what potatoes do. But my people take potatoes out of the ground in September and eat good, firm, sweet potatoes from that same harvest clear through the winter and into the following spring, 6 months and more, with no refrigeration at all. Same potato. 6 months instead of 3 weeks. And the difference isn't luck, and it isn't some special variety. It's an old trick, a bit of knowing that most folks have never been told, and once you know it, you'll never lose a bag of potatoes again. So let me get right into it. Now let me tell you what the trick actually is, because it's really the understanding of one simple thing. A potato is not dead. That's the whole secret right there. Understand that and everything else follows. A potato isn't like a can of beans sitting inert on a shelf. A potato is a living, breathing thing, and it wants very badly to do one thing above all others, and that is to grow into a new potato plant. That's its whole purpose. It's a seed, essentially, and it's sitting there waiting for the signal that spring has come so it can sprout and grow. So everything that goes wrong with your potatoes, the sprouting, the softening, the shriveling, the greening, is the potato trying to live, trying to grow, trying to wake up. And the entire old art of keeping potatoes is nothing more than this. You keep the potato asleep. You give it conditions that say, quite firmly, it is not spring, do not wake up, go back to sleep. Keep it asleep, and it keeps beautifully for months. Wake it up, and it's gone in weeks. That's the whole thing. So let me give you the 4 conditions that keep a potato sleeping, because there are exactly 4, and each one matters. The first is dark, total dark, and this is the biggest one and the one most folks get wrong. Light is the potato's alarm clock. Light tells the potato that it's above ground, that spring has come, that it's time to wake and sprout and grow. And light does something worse besides. It turns the potato green. And that green is the potato producing a substance that is genuinely not good to eat, a real thing you should take seriously, and I'll speak more on that when I give you the honest cautions. So your potatoes must be kept in the dark, and I mean proper dark, not a dim corner, not a paper bag on a lit counter, not a clear plastic bag anywhere. Dark. In a bin, in a box, in a cellar, under a cloth, in a closed cupboard, wherever, but dark. That single change alone will do more for your potatoes than anything else you can do. The second is cool but never freezing. This is the temperature the whole thing turns on. Potatoes want cold, near as cold as you can get without freezing. And the colder they are, the more deeply asleep they stay, and the longer they keep. But they must never freeze, for freezing ruins them entirely, turns them to mush when they thaw. So cool, cold even, but always above freezing. That's precisely the temperature of a good root cellar, which is exactly why the root cellar exists, and why potatoes are the very first thing that goes into one. That steady, cold, above freezing earth cool is the perfect potato sleeping temperature, and it holds them for months. Meanwhile, the warm kitchen, where most folks keep them, is telling those potatoes it's spring, wake up, grow. Of course, they sprout in 3 weeks. They were told to. The third is a bit of dampness, and this surprises folks. Potatoes want humid air around them, not dry. A too dry place pulls the moisture right out of them, and that's what makes them shrivel and go soft and wrinkly. So a slightly damp, earthy air keeps them plump and firm. That's the root cellar again with its natural earth dampness, and it's why potatoes keep so beautifully down there and go limp in a dry, warm cupboard. And the fourth is air. Potatoes need to breathe because they're alive and breathing, and they'll rot fast if they're sealed up. So never ever store them in a sealed plastic bag, which traps the moisture they give off and holds it against them and rots the lot. Store them in something that breathes: a wooden crate, a basket, a burlap sack, a cardboard box with holes, a bin that isn't sealed. Loose, breathing, with air moving around them. So there it is. Dark, cold but not frozen, damp, and breathing. Get those 4 right, and your potatoes will sleep straight through until spring. Now let me give you the other half of it, the part that happens before they ever go into storage, because this matters just as much, and folks skip it entirely. It's the curing. When potatoes first come out of the ground, they're not ready to store. Their skins are thin and tender and easily damaged, and they've got little nicks and scrapes from the digging. So before they go into the cellar, you cure them. You spread them out in a spot that's warmish, humid, and dark, and you leave them for a week or 2. And in that time, something quietly wonderful happens. The skins thicken up and toughen into proper protective armor, and the little cuts and scrapes heal themselves over and seal shut. And that toughened, healed skin is what stands between your potato and every rot and mold that would otherwise get in. A cured potato keeps for months. An uncured one, with its thin skin and its open scrapes, lets the rot right in and goes bad far sooner. That curing week is one of the highest value weeks in the whole gardening year, and almost nobody outside the old ways knows to do it. And there's a related rule, and it's a strict one. Never wash your potatoes before storing. I know it feels wrong, but hear me. Washing them puts water on them and rubs and damages that precious skin, and wet potatoes rot. You brush the loose dirt off gently, dry, and that's all. A bit of soil left on them is perfectly fine, and in fact it helps protect them. Wash them when you're about to cook them, not before you store them. This one rule saves more potato crops than any other. Now let me give you the rest of the old knowing, the small things that add up. Only store your good sound ones. Go through and set aside anything cut, bruised, damaged, diseased, or soft. Those go to the kitchen to be eaten right away, this week, not into the cellar. Because one bad potato in a bin will rot, and that rot will spread to its neighbors, and you can lose a great deal of good food to one bad one you didn't cull. Store only perfect, sound, cured potatoes. Keep apples away from your potatoes. This one always surprises folks. Apples give off something as they sit, a natural ripening gas, and that gas tells potatoes to wake up and sprout. So a barrel of apples stored next to your potato bin will sprout the whole lot far sooner. Keep them well apart. The old folks knew this without knowing the chemistry. They just knew apples and potatoes don't get along, and they were right. Check on them through the winter. Once a month or so, go through the bin and pull out any that are starting to turn. Catch the one bad potato before it takes 10 good ones with it. That 5 minutes a month protects your whole winter supply. And onions likewise are best kept apart from potatoes, for they want drier conditions, and the two don't do each other any favors stored close together. Let me speak to the harvest itself for a moment, since good keeping starts in the ground. The old folks let their potatoes mature properly before digging, waiting until the tops had died back, because a potato dug too young has a thin, immature skin that will never keep, no matter what you do afterward. Then they dug on a dry day, in dry soil, gently, because every fork you drive through a potato and every bruise you put in one is a door for rot to walk through later. A potato is more delicate than it looks. It bruises like fruit, and a bruised potato in your bin is a rotten potato by January. So the good keeper digs carefully, handles gently, sets them in baskets rather than dropping them, and treats every potato like an egg. That gentleness in September is what you're eating in March. And they never left them lying out in the sun after digging, not even for an afternoon, because that's where the greening starts, right there in the field, before they've even gotten to the cellar. And let me give you the old ways of storing them once they're cured, because there's more than one, and folks may do with what they had. The simplest is the bin or crate in the cellar, filled loose so the air moves through, sometimes with a bit of straw between the layers. Some folks pack them in boxes of dry sand or sawdust or wood shavings, which holds them in the dark, cushions them from bruising, keeps the dampness steady around them, and keeps each potato from touching its neighbors so a rot can't spread. That's an old trick worth knowing, and it works beautifully. And there's the old clamp or pit for those with no cellar at all, a mound of potatoes on the ground, covered thickly with straw and then with earth, so the earth and straw hold them cold and dark and damp right through the winter out in the field, with a bit of straw poking out the top to let them breathe. Folks stored whole winters of potatoes that way for centuries, with nothing but a heap of dirt and straw. That's how simple this is at bottom. It needs nothing but dark, cold, damp, and air, and the earth gives all four for free. Let me tell you how it was in the home I grew up in, because the potatoes were the beating heart of our winter. The digging in the fall was a whole family affair, all of us out in the field, the little ones gathering behind the fork, and it went on for days, bushel after bushel. Then the curing, spread out in the dim, and then down to the cellar into the big bin, hundreds of pounds of them, more than a child could imagine eating. And all winter long my mother sent us down for them, and we'd come up with an armful, and there was supper. Fried, boiled, mashed, in the soup, in the stew, with the ham, day after day, month after month. And they were as good in March as they'd been in October, firm and sweet, because they'd been sleeping quietly in the dark and the cold that whole time, never once told that spring had come. We never bought a potato. Not one. And I never thought about it as a child, but I understand now that the reason we ate all winter was that somebody in every generation before me had learned exactly how to keep a potato asleep and had passed it on. Now let me be the honest, careful neighbor and give you the serious cautions, because there's one here that genuinely matters to your health, and I'd never skip it. That green you see on a potato that's been in the light is a real warning. Green means the potato has produced a natural substance that is genuinely toxic and can make you properly sick, and it's not something to shrug off. Sprouts carry it too. So here's the plain rule. A potato with a little green on the surface, you cut that green away generously, well past it, and cut the sprouts off, and the rest is generally fine. But a potato that's badly greened all through, or heavily sprouted and shriveled and soft, or that tastes bitter, throw it out, and don't try to save it. Bitter taste is your body telling you something true, so heed it. And peel green ones rather than eating the skin. This is a real thing worth respecting, especially where children are concerned, and the whole reason to store them in the dark in the first place. Beyond that, the plain sense applies. If a potato is rotted, foul-smelling, slimy, or you're in any doubt, don't eat it, and don't take chances. And one more practical caution. A large quantity of potatoes rotting in a closed, unventilated cellar can produce genuinely dangerous gases in rare cases. So keep your cellar properly ventilated, and don't let a big, rotting mess sit in a sealed underground space. That's an uncommon thing, but a serious one, and good ventilation and regular checking prevent it entirely. And one last practical bit on the seed potatoes, because it closes the circle. The old folks didn't just eat their whole crop. Come spring, they'd set aside some of the best keepers from the cellar, and those would go back in the ground to grow the next year's crop. Now here's the pretty part. By spring, those potatoes are finally starting to want to sprout despite everything, and that's exactly what you want in the seed potato. So the very tendency you fought all winter becomes useful at the end. A family that kept its potatoes well and saved its seed never needed to buy a potato at all, ever, growing next year's crop from this year's harvest on and on, year after year, generation after generation. That's the whole loop closed, with no store in it anywhere. And it's a beautiful thing. And it all rests on knowing how to keep a potato asleep from October to March. With those cautions given, let me tell you why this humble bit of knowing matters more than it seems. Potatoes are one of the finest survival foods there ever was. They're filling, they're nourishing, they grow abundantly in a small space, they're cheap as anything, and a family can genuinely live on them through a hard winter. Whole peoples have. And the difference between a potato that lasts 3 weeks and one that lasts 6 months is the difference between a food you must keep running to the store for and a food you can lay up in the fall and eat from all winter with no store, no power, no cost. That's the whole reason this matters. It's not a kitchen tip. It's the foundation of feeding your family through a winter from your own ground. And notice, as always, that it costs nothing. No machine, no product, no bought thing at all. The cool of the earth is free. The dark is free. The curing is free. The knowing is free. It's all just understanding what a potato is and giving it what it needs. And any person can do it in a cold corner of a basement, in a box in an unheated garage, in a bin in a cool closet, anywhere that's dark and cold and a bit damp and breathing. And let me speak plainly to those of you with no cellar and no garden, because this is entirely open to you and it will save you real money starting this week. You can buy potatoes from the store in quantity, cheap in the fall when they're most abundant, and keep them for months instead of weeks if you'll simply give them the 4 conditions. Find the coldest, darkest spot you've got that doesn't freeze. An unheated garage in a cold climate, a cold basement corner, a closet against an outside wall, a cool cupboard well away from the stove and the sunlight. Get them out of the plastic bag they came in and into a cardboard box with a few holes punched in it, or a basket, or a paper sack that breathes. Throw a cloth over them for full dark. Keep them off the apples, and check them now and then. That's it. That's the entire method, and it costs you nothing and takes 10 minutes. And it's the difference between throwing out half a bag every month and eating your potatoes down to the last one. Most folks lose a shocking amount of food to nothing but ignorance of 4 simple conditions, and you needn't be one of them any longer. And I'd add this, that once you understand the principle here, you'll find it applies far beyond potatoes. Onions, garlic, squash, apples, carrots, cabbage. Every keeping food has its own set of conditions it wants, and every one of them is about slowing the living thing down and keeping it from waking or drying or rotting. Some want cold and damp like the potato, some want cold and dry like the onion, some want cool and airy. The old folks knew each one's preferences the way you know your own children's. And that knowledge is what let a family carry a whole harvest through a whole winter. Learn the potato first, because it's the foundation and the most valuable, and then learn the rest, one at a time, and before long you'll be keeping half your food the old way, for free, in the dark and the cold, the way folks did for all of history. So here's what I'd leave you with. Stop treating potatoes like groceries and start treating them like the living, sleeping things they are. Cure them a week or 2 after harvest, warm and humid and dark, so their skins toughen and their scrapes heal. Never wash them before storing. Cull out every damaged one. Then put them somewhere dark, cold but never freezing, a bit damp and breathing, in a crate or a basket or a burlap sack, well away from your apples and onions. Check them once a month and pull any that turn. Do that, and those potatoes will sleep right through until spring, firm and sweet, and you'll eat from one September harvest for 6 months. And when you find yourself in March cooking potatoes you dug in the fall, you'll understand why my people never much worried about the grocery store. Because in the end, that bag of potatoes going soft under your sink was never the potato's fault. Nobody ever told you it was alive and that it was only trying to grow, and that all you had to do was tell it that spring hadn't come yet. Now you know. And that one small piece of old knowing will feed your family all winter long. If this is the kind of practical, useful old wisdom you've been hungry for, the kind that makes you capable and self-reliant and connects you back to the good sense of those who came before, then stay here with me. There's so much more where this came from, and I aim to bring it back to you one piece at a time. Subscribe, and we'll keep remembering the old ways together, because some of the most valuable things we ever knew are the simple ones we let ourselves forget, and the humble art of keeping a potato asleep till spring is surely one of them.